What's going on, everybody? It is the NFL Experts. I'm Wayne G, joined as always by Mark. What's going on?
What's up, Wayno? On location again. This time just because I wanted to. At Starbucks. Drinking a coffee, enjoying your company, sir.
Oh, fantastic. Nothing like a coffee and then me sharing my knowledge with the world. And hopefully you are one of those people absorbing that knowledge. If you are watching, if you are listening via Spotify, I did want to make sure you are following us on social media. That is going to be at NFL Experts Pod on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, uh, TikTok, and it's NFL Experts Pod at gmail.com. If you want to email us, we are an interactive show, which means you can interact with us during the live stream. Or if you're somebody who listens, maybe on your way to work on Spotify, shoot us a question, interact with us on Twitter. We'll get back to you. If we like your idea, we'll do it in the show.
Yes, please chime in. We love all the content. We love interacting with everybody to get everybody's opinion and views. We love the debate.
Now, this week's episode is a 2-round mock draft. Basically, myself, Mark, and Sully each took, let's say, 10 to 13 teams, not 13, 10 to 12 teams, whatever it is, for 32. And basically, we figured out we're going to be the GMs of the team. We're going to draft how we want to draft if we were actually the GMs, make trades as if we were actually the GMs. And we came up with a 2-round mock draft. So we're going to run through some of those picks. But before we do have some NFL news breaking like hours ago. Is that Stefon Diggs traded from the Houston Texans, to the Houston Texans from the Buffalo Bills. And the thing that blew my mind away was the compensation, because the Bills traded him plus a 5th-round pick, plus a 7th-round pick, and they got back a second in next year's draft, not even a pick in this year's draft. And I thought that was kind of low compensation for Diggs. I don't know what your thoughts were.
Very low, Wayne. It just kind of shows you like how much maybe of a diva he is, and none of these other teams were like, "I'm not gonna deal with this, and this is what we're gonna give you to get if you guys really want to get rid of him." You know?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, obviously, he's been complaining for at least the last couple seasons. He's been bad-mouthing Allen and the franchise as a whole, which I don't understand, because every year he has 100, 110 catches. What's he so unhappy about?
Boggles me, man. I don't know that he's not the one making the game-winning plays. I don't know, man. Like, I don't understand a lot of why these receivers are the way they are.
Yeah, I have no idea. I do know that the compensation was a little bit low. And the thing about the compensation being low is it got me asking the question, what does this do to T. Higgins' trade market? Because obviously he wants to be traded. He's on the franchise tag. He has been about as 60% as productive as Diggs. Now, I know he's a little bit younger, but not much, about 6 years younger, 5 years younger. But he's been 60% as productive. So if they get 60% of the compensation, the Bengals may end up getting a 4th-round pick in 2025 for T. Higgins.
Yeah, but then also, that dead money from Stefon Diggs. So that puts them in a bind with their salary cap. So who knows what they can afford, if they could afford T. Higgins. I'm sure they could. I'm sure they could work it out. But are the Bengals going to want to let go of Higgins? I know his name keeps getting popped up in trade rumors, but do they really want to get rid of him? When they franchise tag him, they still got him for this year.
I think if they wanted to keep him, they'd already have a long-term contract in place for him, and they don't have that yet. I don't know how long they want to wait. Maybe they'll wait and see what happens in the draft. If they get a good receiver, then they trade him after the draft. But his market value is never higher than it is going into the draft. And if I'm the Bengals, I'm looking to move him right away, but not if I'm only going to get a 3rd or a 4th-round pick for him, because I'm thinking he's a guy I would want to get at least a 2nd for. So I'm curious, because you just got a 2025 2nd for Stefon Diggs. So I don't know if you get a 2nd for T. Higgins, or like I said, if it's going to be a 3rd or a 4th.
Well, it seems like a lot of teams aren't giving up this year's picks. It seems like they're giving up next year's picks. Like, what was the last trade that went through? That was Snead. He's there. They only got a pick for next year also. So maybe teams are determined to use these picks this year in the draft.
Well, this is an incredible draft. Obviously, we've got about 5 or 6 positions that run about 4 rounds deep. So it is a great draft to have lots of picks, particularly in the top five. It doesn't surprise me that teams will be looking to trade great draft so far, trade those picks. But again, if I'm trading a player, I want the better pick. And like you said, with the Buffalo situation, they now have to eat $31 million this year on that Diggs contract and $31 million next year. So basically, their salary or their cap, they took an additional $3 million cap hit versus if they were going to keep him. So they're paying more not to have him.
And then now they have to figure out some offensive weapons for Josh Allen. Like, who do they have? I was looking at the roster, Max Hollins, bunch of guys that are like no-name guys in the league. Like, they're going to have to move up to get one of these top guys. Or I know you said the wide receiver class is pretty deep this year, so they'll still get somebody at their pick. But I don't know. What do you think, Wayne?
I do think that they would like to address the need in the draft. I don't necessarily think that they trade up, because if they trade up, then the only reason to trade up is to get one of the top 3 guys. And those top 3 guys are going to go in the top 10 picks, the top 12 picks. So does Buffalo really want to trade to move from 29 to 9, which is going to cost them a fortune, probably multiple firsts, to get a receiver? Or do they just wait in 29? And like I said, at 29, let's say Thomas is gone. He's the 4th receiver, Brian Thomas. He's gone. You still have your, Xavier Legette. You still have Keon Coleman. You still have Franklin. Right? There's still some good receivers. Yeah, Mitchell. There's some good receivers there they can get. So I don't think they move from this spot. As far as weapons, like I said, they signed Curtis Samuel, who was supposed to replace Gabe Davis. They still have the tight end that they drafted last year. I'm just spacing on the name, but the big guy,
Kincaid.
Kincaid, Dalton Kincaid. So they're all right, but it would be nice to have a true number 1 receiver. However, they're not going to get that at 29. They're going to get a number 2 receiver, which is what Samuel is. So you'll have a couple of number 2s and then a tight end.
I mean, but they could use some draft capital to move up a little to get somebody like you said, I guess not the top 3, but maybe they can move up for Thomas, maybe?
It depends on where Thomas goes, right? Because Thomas could go as high as 11, 11 or 12 in that range. He could also go as low as 27, 28, 29. So if I'm them, I'd probably wait to see what happens with Thomas. I'm not going to trade into the top 15 to get him. But if he's there at 20, maybe I look at moving up 8 or 9 spots to get him. But I'm not obviously not moving up into the top 10 to get one of the first 3 receivers.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is like move up to like 20 or something like that and grab him if he's still there,
Right. Which again, we have to see how the draft plays out, because if he's there, they make the move. If he goes early, then I think they get somebody at 29. But I definitely think it's a wide receiver in round 1 for the Buffalo Bills.
Oh, totally agree. Totally agree.
Now, they could also trade for Brandon Cooks, the guy who gets traded every draft day. We bring it up every show. They could go and get.
I feel like they should go. Yeah, you're right, Wayne. I think they should go out and get someone else, even if they do address it in the draft. They need that help.
And there's guys they could sign. I mean, Michael Gallup, I think Michael Thomas, right? There's still some receivers in the free agent market they could sign, again, as a number 3 receiver. They're really not in horrible shape. And as long as Josh Allen is the quarterback, I mean, the receiver's secondary to me. They've got a top 3 quarterback in the league.
Right. It's like that saying, Wayne, good quarterbacks hide warts,
Right. The other bit of news, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, another team picking very low in the draft at number 32. Just recently tried to get a vote passed where they would have taxes go up in their area, and those taxes would pay for an $800 million stadium renovation of Arrowhead. And it was voted down. They did not get enough votes. They're not going to get tax dollars to make the renovation, at least not this way. And I'm curious to get your thoughts, because there is that thought of, should the taxpayers have to pay for those renovations, or should the team pay for it? That's the first question.
Well, I think, like, to a certain degree, you want your fans, I guess, to help pay for it. And like these rich owners, dude, they don't want to foot the whole bill and pay for the whole thing, like kind of like Kroenke did, because I think Kroenke paid for the whole thing in LA. And it ended up costing him more in the long run than he initially thought. So maybe that's what they don't want to happen. They don't want to have to like sink all this money into the stadium And to be honest with you, I was kind of surprised that Kansas City didn't approve it. Like, don't they love their team? Like, I don't understand, Wayne.
They do. And I think one of the reasons that the taxpayers pay for these renovations is because of the revenue that's brought in by the team. So these hotels and bars and whatever, casinos, anything that they have in that area benefits from the Chiefs, particularly on Saturdays and Sundays during the NFL season. So the 800 million, I'm not sure exactly what it would have done to taxes, if it would have raised taxes in the property taxes about 1 mil or whatever it is. I don't know. But it was shot down. I also don't know if the Chiefs own Arrowhead Stadium or if it's leased. If it's leased, then the taxpayers absolutely have to pay for it because it's not their stadium. It's the taxpayer stadium. So I don't know. I think obviously they're going to try to figure something out. But my next question was, since they didn't get this $800 million, do they consider moving? I'm not saying like move to New York or LA, but do they consider moving maybe to the Kansas side instead of the Missouri side?
That's a good point, Wayne. I think if they really want this state-of-the-art stadium, then they need to figure out some other avenue. And if that's the other avenue, people, I don't know if a lot of NFL fans out there know, but they actually moved to Kansas City from, I think they were called the Houston Texans, right? Before actually there was the Houston Texans. And they ended up moving to Kansas City because the Cowboys were just so dominant in that state, and that's why they moved to Kansas City to become the Chiefs. So I don't know if a lot of people know that. So it's not like they don't know what it's like to move their franchise. So you do it could happen.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs have been around since before the AFL-NFL merger. So they were an AFL team, I believe. So maybe it happened before all of that. I don't know how far back the history goes. It would be funny if they were the Houston Texans, then became the Kansas City Chiefs. Then we had the Houston Oilers, who became the Tennessee Titans, and then we got the Houston Texans.
Right. Well, I'm telling you, look that up. I may be wrong on the name, but it was Houston. I want to say it was the Houston Texans because they had like the shape of Texas on their helmet. And I remember they wore those retro throwbacks back in the day. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that they moved because of the Cowboys.
All right. Well, my other question for you, I guess the last question I have regarding this, $800 million for renovations. The entire Cowboys Stadium, which I think we would agree, the Cowboys Stadium's pretty state of the art. It was just built by Jerry Jones. That cost $1 billion to build. This is 80% of that for renovations. What kind of renovations are they making?
I don't know. I kind of agree with you on that. I didn't know all the details, Wayne. So I'm really glad that you told me that part so they're basically asking them to pay for the majority of it, and they're only paying like 25%, and taxpayers are paying like 75%. That's not right.
Well, no, I'm curious what kind of renovations cost $800 million. To me, that's an entire stadium rebuild. They're rebuilding the stadium. They're not making renovations.
Right. Is that what it is? I don't know. I didn't see the plans. So I don't know if it was like, I think it was partly too that they were doing it with the Royals. So it was going to be like a whole thing with both teams, I believe. So I think that might be the reason why they were so much. Yeah.
Maybe like a big complex that has two fields in there. Because I know nobody likes the whole playing football on the baseball field and you have those lines in the dirt. But if they had two separate fields in one complex, maybe.
I think that's what it was because they're like really close to each other now. So I think that's what they were planning on.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. And then before we get into the draft, a bit of draft news I'll bring up because I'm a Patriots fan for now. And basically their general manager, Elliott Wolf, rumor has it he's been really high on JJ McCarthy. He was at the pro day. He loves them. He wants the Patriots to take him. He's telling everybody he can they should be taking JJ McCarthy. I guess my question is, I don't mind JJ McCarthy. That's a fine pick. He's a guy who can come in and do the job. Do you think he's trying to get them to take McCarthy at 3? Or do you think he's thinking trade down and get McCarthy? Because there are still some teams that have him as a second round grade.
But he seems like the belle of the ball in a way, don't you think, Wayne? Everybody's like talking about him, like he's moved up the draft board. Like every team wants him now. Now the Patriots want him. I know the Broncos want him. Like they're just another team added onto this list of teams that want him now. So I'm kind of curious of the teams that don't see him as a top guy. Because I'd be really curious to know who those teams are. Like I said, I think this is just more draft drama. Like you said, you can't really believe anybody this time of year because everybody's lying. So I don't know what their motive is why that's out there. So I'm curious with that.
It could very well be a smoke screen. Elliot Wolf could be just trying to get teams interested in taking McCarthy sooner because he's saying, I want him at 3. So he's hoping teams will trade up to 3. Maybe they try to get him or whatnot. Because like I said, I watched the tape on McCarthy. It's not great tape. The tape on him is not great. He does some things well, but I understand I see more of a second round quarterback on the tape than I do a first round quarterback. And we're talking about this guy going 3rd overall, maybe 2nd overall. I had him in one of my mock drafts. So it could just be a lot of hype and he's going to end up going 29th and everyone's going to be like, holy cow, he fell. No, that's where he should have gone.
Right. Which could happen, Wayne. You never know. Like we talk about a lot off air about the draft. Like you never know how it's going to go, what players teams are going to fall in love with, so we don't even really know what teams are truly in love with JJ. Like the Broncos and all these other teams have came out with this. They might not even be the teams that really want him,
So as for our mock draft, again, this was a full 2-round mock draft, each of us taking some different teams. I'm going to start things off with the first overall pick. It was the Chicago Bears. Sully, I believe, had the Bears, and he kicked things off with Caleb Williams. And obviously, that's the pick that we think it's going to be. Caleb Williams, as of right now, is the first overall pick. Now, my question for you, I know we've discussed this a couple of times, is do the Bears trade down to 2 with Washington, who likes, Caleb Williams? They take him at 1, and then the Bears have that second pick. Do you think what possibility, if you put a percentage on it, what do you think is the chances of the Bears trade back to 2?
The percentage of them actually trading to 2 to not get Caleb, basically, right?
Right.
Correct. I'm gonna say 20%.
Okay, well, because I have it about 50%. I think there's a 50-50 chance that they trade back to the second overall pick. And again, Caleb's going number 1. Whether he goes to the Commanders or whether he goes to the Bears or some other team that comes in and sneaks out of nowhere, he is going number 1. So all those people who think Caleb Williams is going to be, an 8th pick, 9th pick, it's not happening. He is the best quarterback in the draft. He is going to be the number 1 pick. He was going to be the number 1 pick last year if he came out, right? He's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. I do want to say to all those people who are like, yeah, but he paints his fingernails and he has a pink iPhone case. He can wear a wedding dress to every game if he's going to go out there and throw for 350 and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, he could be the next Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman wore a wedding dress, and everybody in Chicago loved the dude.
Well, he married himself. There's a big announcement that he was going to get married, and all these press people showed up. He's like, I'm marrying myself.
Yeah, see, Caleb could do something like that in Chicago. He'll be fine.
Okay. So Chicago embraces that. You had the number 2 pick, Washington Commanders. You went Jaden Daniels. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Why not Drake May? Why not JJ McCarthy? Why is Daniels going number 2?
Well, because honestly, Dwayne, I'm in agreement with you that I think Washington Commanders really want Caleb. But I think it's one of those things where Chicago's just like refusing to let go of that pick because they really want Caleb also. So, and I think the reason why Washington wants it so bad is because partly the reason why they hired Kingsbury, because Kingsbury worked with them in USC and they're friends and all that. So, like, after we were just talking about how he's the best guy and why he'll go number 1 or the Bears should trade back, I think that they really want him, and so they really need to try and get him, but the Bears aren't going to do it. And so the next best guy, I think, is Jaden Daniels.
Okay, and I like Jaden Daniels a lot. He's probably my favorite player in this draft. The problem with Jaden Daniels, to me, if I'm a GM, which is why I hope the Patriots don't take him at 3, is that he needs a year to sit. He's not ready to play in the NFL. Caleb Williams is ready to play in the NFL. Drake May is ready to play in the NFL. Daniels has the potential to be better than all of them, but he's not ready yet. And so he needs to go to a team where he can sit, because if you put him in there right away, I think that's too much pressure on a guy who's not ready to play right away. And I don't know your thoughts on Jaden Daniels, if you think that he's the type of guy who can come in right away and be a star, or do you think that he also could use a little bit of time?
I'm with you. I think all these guys could probably use time, dude. But in this day's NFL, if you're a top 3 pick, 1, 2, 3, they're going to expect you to play, and especially depending on where you go. So if he goes to Washington, yeah, they're going to ask him to play right away. So yeah, it could be a disaster for him going there. I feel like these guys deserve to go to like an offensive coach because it'll help their development of their career. But like we were talking about last episode about like how players, I'm for how players should stick up for themselves and decide where they want to play because that ultimately decides your career.
Now, at number 3, we have the New England Patriots, and I was offered 2 trades to trade out of 3. The first one was from the Denver Broncos, who offered Patrick Surtain and I think number 11. And then the Minnesota Vikings offered 11, 23, and a first-round pick in 2025. And I looked at it as, while I do think Surtain is worth 2 first-round picks, so I'm getting 3 either way. I like the idea of picking the actual 3 guys and not having 2 of them invested into one guy, let's say. So I accepted the Vikings pick, and that was also my team. And the Vikings at number 3 took Drake May. Again, no brainer. The Vikings need a quarterback. The whole reason they traded to get 23 in the first place was so they could make a move like this. So I think it all worked out for them.
Well, well, I'll just say as the Broncos GM in this draft, because we all did our favorite teams, you got to admit that I was aggressive, so I was trying to get Drake May. Minnesota got him. So let's continue on so we can see how the picks went.
For sure. So at 4, the Arizona Cardinals take Marvin Harrison. That was Sully's pick. It's a no-brainer pick. That's the chalk pick. We knew that was going to happen. It gets interesting at 5. The Chargers, rather than taking a receiver in Malik Neighbors, because they are receiver thirsty, they need a receiver, they go tackle and they take Joe Alt. So again, you were the GM of the Chargers. What was the train of thought there?
I just think Harbaugh is a very old school coach, and he's going to run the ball a lot. And I'm not really sure who their running back is. I know they just signed the dude from Baltimore. I'm drawing a blank on his name, Gus Edwards. And I just feel like they're going to run the ball a lot and make it easier for Herbert so he doesn't have as much pressure on him. And I think the best way of doing that is building your O-line. And why not get the best O-lineman in the draft with Joe Alt?
Yeah, I think Joe Alt is one of the best offensive linemen in any draft. I mean, I compare him to Jonathan Ogden. I think that's a good comp for him. So he goes to the Chargers, and now we have him and Rashawn Slater. Do you move Slater to the right side, or does Alt come in and play right?
I would put Slater on the right side because I believe in college he played right. So I don't think it'd be that big of a transition for him.
Okay. The New York Giants at 6 take Rome Odunze. They need a wide receiver. My choice was Neighbors or Odunze. I went Odunze because he's a bigger possession receiver rather than a run after catch receiver. And then Sully takes Malik Neighbors for the Tennessee Titans. Now, I wish he was here to defend this pick because this was the first one I had a huge question about. They've got Calvin Ridley. They've got DeAndre Hopkins. Why are they taking a wide receiver with the 7th overall pick? I didn't understand his train of thought on this, and I'm curious if you have an idea of what he might have been thinking.
Maybe he took Neighbors because I stole Alt, and Alt was probably that guy for them, maybe. Not sure.
It could be. But I will say that that's the first pick of the first round that I really didn't like. And then we have Denver, who trades Patrick Surtain to the Atlanta Falcons at number 8 so that Denver can move up to 8. And let me just make sure I have the exact trade details. Patrick Surtain and a 2025 third-round pick for number 8 and a 2025 fourth-round pick. And who did you have Denver taking at 8?
At number 8, the Denver Broncos select J.J. McCarthy, Michigan.
So if this happens, are you happy with this pick if they get McCarthy?
I am. Like I said, me as a fan, I wouldn't have saw the Broncos trade offer, to Minnesota. But if I would have known that they were like trying to make a move for one of these guys, yes, I'd be very happy.
Okay. And you're okay with trading Surtain because I think that he's a lockdown corner and those don't come on trees. Those don't grow on trees.
True. But I mean, it's like the same thing that I told Stoley is like, you need a quarterback to win in this league. I know you need good corners, but you need a good quarterback. We are so quarterback desperate. I wouldn't say desperate, but needy and hungry. That's why I would go that route.
At number 9, we have the Chicago Bears on the clock again. Now, my friend Brandon Combs, who is a huge Bears fan, he actually thinks that there's no way in hell that the Bears take anybody at 9. They're trading out of that spot, in his opinion. They're either moving up to get a receiver or they're moving back and accumulating more picks, to the point that I asked him if he would give me his mortgage. Like I could get his house if they do stay at 9, because I do think there's a chance they stay at 9. And in our draft, they took Dallas Turner, the edge. I think this is a good pick. I think when I had to my solo mock draft, I had them staying at 9 and taking Byron Murphy. So I think defensive line definitely, or edge, makes sense, right? For the Bears at 9.
I do. I think that's a total need for them. They need another guy to go along with Sweat. So yeah, totally.
Then it was the New York Jets. They take Talisi Fuaga. They need offensive line help desperately. I don't know if they're going to re-sign Becton. I know they did go out and get Tyron Smith, but they still need tackle help. So I have them taking Fuaga. Then finally, the Patriots at 11 take Olu Fashanu. And if this happens, I'm very happy, because I said way back when that at 3, they should take Joe Alt, not a quarterback. So the idea that they're going offensive tackle before anything else, I would be very happy with that.
I think that's a good pick for them. Even though a lot of draft boards have him falling, what made you think it's a good fit for New England?
I just think he's the second best tackle in this draft. I know that Fuaga goes first to the Jets. I know that he's kind of rising while Fashanu is falling. I don't see the reason for it. I still think Fashanu is a great offensive tackle. I think he comes in. He's the left tackle day 1 for the New England Patriots. So they get their starting tackle, and then they also have, they re-signed Nwounu. They still got Strange coming back. They've got Andrews. So then their offensive line is only really missing a right tackle.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
At 12, where this was Denver's pick, and they had traded with, or they traded, oh, it looks like they trade out to Philadelphia, right? So Denver trades to Philadelphia, number 12 for number 22 and number 50. And the Eagles take Quinyon Mitchell. But again, you're the Denver GM. What was your train of thought making this trade instead of picking at 12?
I decided to make this trade because we really need a second round pick. And I figured even if we move down, we can still get the corner that I was eyeing, or one of the corners that I was eyeing. So that's partly why I did it, because we really needed a second round pick.
Okay, that makes sense. Then we have Las Vegas. They are in desperate need of a tackle. The top 3 tackles are off the board, so they go with Amarius Mims, who I think is a reach at that point, but it's what they need, and they just have to reach because that's the only way they're going to get the position. And
it's the greater way to reach, Wayne.
We have New Orleans, who I took instead of you. You were supposed to have New Orleans, but I took them, and I drafted Troy Fontenot to get them some interior offensive line help. But then you took Brock Bowers for the Colts. And this was a pick I really liked. You must have gotten some great advice, because I think that he fits in perfectly there with Anthony Richardson.
I was just going to say, Wayne, you gave me some great advice, because I was kind of going to go corner this route, but I was like, Bowers is still really good prospect on the board still. And I was actually still really surprised that he was still there, and I wasn't even looking at him. So you made me give me some good points to look at him. And so, yeah, I thought he was the best pick for them.
The Seattle Seahawks pick at 16. We had Jared Verse, the edge, going to Seattle. And then Jacksonville at 17 takes Byron Murphy, who actually kind of fell. We thought he might be a top 10 pick. He falls to 17. I think this is a great pick for Jacksonville. J.C. Latham to the Bengals. Terrion Arnold to the Rams. Pittsburgh gets Jackson Powers Johnson at center. And then we'll get to number 21, Miami. This was your pick, Graham Barton. And I'll let you defend yourself, but first I'm going to let the audience know what happened with this pick, because at 21, Mark had asked, could I trade up to 21 for the Broncos? And he had mentioned like a 4th and a 5th round pick, which I thought he meant a 4th and a 5th to swap and have Denver go to 21 and Miami go to 22. But he meant a 4th and a 5th to get 21 flat out and then have 21 and 22. And I was like, whoa, pump the brakes. We're not making that trade. And eventually he just left it at Miami. He didn't make the swap, and Miami takes Graham Barton.
Well, like I told you off air, I'm still learning all the trade values of picks. So I just thought I wouldn't try to get both of those picks. And when I saw that it was going to cost too much, that's when I decided just to keep it the way it was.
Okay. And Graham Barton has been rumored to Miami, but then we get Denver again at 22. You get your corner to replace Surtain, who you traded. You get Cooper DeJean. I like DeJean. I think he can play corner, but I know a lot of people have him at safety. You also lost Justin Simmons. So how are you thinking of the Broncos use Cooper DeJean?
I think wherever he fits best. If he fits best at safety, then we need help there too. So if not, like at corner, and also I don't know if you know this, Wayne, but we drafted another corner from Iowa, Riley Moss, last year. So maybe they get him and pair them together. That was kind of my thought.
All right, that makes sense. And then we have 23. This is the New England Patriots again, because they've made that previous trade with the Minnesota Vikings, and they take Brian Thomas Jr. So still not taking a quarterback. They've gotten tackle at 11. At 23, they get Brian Thomas, who I think is now their number one receiver. And I love this pick if it actually happens in real life. Dallas at 24 takes Jerzon Newton. And then Green Bay, you have 25, Laiatu Latu at 25. Sully raised his eyebrows about this pick. I actually really liked this pick for Green Bay because I do think the edge is one of their needs.
Well, thanks, Wayne. I appreciate you saying that. I did some research on this pick, and because I know how Green Bay picks a certain way, and they only pick certain positions. And so I looked it up and I was researching, and they really don't pick offensive players very often in the first round. It's very few and far between. I did like a 15-year search back of all their picks, and I think the last offensive pick was Jordan Love in 2020, and then before that it was like 4 or 5 or 6 years before that where they picked another offensive player. So they don't typically draft offense in the first round. It's usually defense, and Latu was the best still on the board, so I figured that was who they would have went with.
Yeah, I think if they do, it's a fantastic pick for them. Tampa Bay is Nate Wiggins. Again, Sully's not here to defend himself, but I have to say this. He had Terrion Arnold going to the Rams earlier. Terrion Arnold did not have a good combine. He actually had a bad combine. Nate Wiggins had an amazing combine. I actually thought Nate Wiggins put himself as the number one corner in the draft, even ahead of DeJean. But maybe it was all a big ruse to get Nate Wiggins to Tampa Bay in our draft. He probably should have gone earlier.
Well, I'll admit, I was trying to do a ruse to try to get Brock Bowers to fall to the Broncos, so my ruse didn't work either, Wayne.
We then had Tyler Guyton goes to the Arizona Cardinals. Again, this is another one of Sully's picks I just didn't get, and I even said it when we were drafting. I said they got Paris Johnson last year. They've got a decent other right tackle. Why are they drafting tackle yet again this year? I don't know if this just slipped Sully's mind that he forgot they had 2 tackles. If you wanted to go interior offensive line, fine. But I didn't get this pick. I don't know about you, what you thought of Guyton going to the Cardinals.
I do remember him saying that those guys that you mentioned weren't threats enough for him not to draft another tackle or offensive lineman. I think that was his defense on it. But I'm kind of with you. Maybe they shouldn't have. Maybe they should have got something better, like something more, a position more of need.
Yeah, like cornerback. They're missing 2 corners. They need 2 corners in this draft. And instead of taking a corner, they take a tackle that they don't need. They could have gotten Kool-Aid here. Maybe because somehow Nate Wiggins ended up in Tampa Bay, he wasn't there for them. And so that's why they had to take a tackle. Mm-hmm. Again, the conspiracy continues, and I'm putting the conspiracy on Sully.
Of course you are, Wade.
The Buffalo Bills then pick at 28. I had them taking Tyler Nubin, the safety. And in reality, with this whole Stephon Diggs thing, they're probably going to go with a receiver here or even trade up for a receiver. But at the time that we did this draft, this hadn't happened. And safety seemed like the safe bet. So I had them taking Tyler Nubin, which made sense. But now I think he probably falls in our draft, but we'll get to that. Detroit, you have Kool-Aid McKinstry. So here we go. We have that corner that Arizona should have taken, goes to Detroit.
And that was my pick, and I think they're really needy at Detroit in Detroit for a corner. So and I think that a lot of people like the corners from Alabama. They're real sticky and real good corners, and I think the NFL really respects that college for that reason, and so I think that's why they pick Alabama. I mean, the dude from Alabama, Kool-Aid.
At number 30, we had the Ravens. However, I saw an opportunity to move back into the first round as the Patriots GM, and I trade with the Ravens. I trade 34, 68, and 137. I get back 30 and 93. So I lose a pick. I move down and around, but I do move up to number 30, and I take Michael Penix Jr. Now I have a quarterback and probably one of my favorite quarterbacks in the draft. I would be ecstatic if the Patriots got Michael Penix Jr. But that's the whole point. I moved up to 30. And some people might say, well, you had 34. Were you worried that somebody was going to take him? And I wasn't. But the reason you trade back into round 1 is so you get that 5th-year option on him.
Right. I was kind of curious when you did that, why you made that move, but then it was obvious. Yeah, the 5th-year option, you definitely want that.
And then we have at 31, we have Philadelphia, who they traded pick 53 and a 2025 second for number 31, and they drafted Chop Robinson. I think this might have been a little bit of a reach again for Sully. I'm starting to sound like I don't like Sully's picks, a lot of his picks.
You don't, Wayne, you don't. Too bad Sully's not here to defend you. Where are you, Sully?
And then we have the Chiefs taking Adai Mitchell at 32. And again, I don't think the Chiefs go receiver here. They signed Marquise Brown. Rashee Rice stepped up last year. They still have Sky Moore. I don't think it's a first-round need for them. I think the Kansas City Chiefs go offensive tackle here, not receiver. But again, we have Guyton going to Arizona where he shouldn't have gone. He should have been here at 32 for them. So I don't know. Your thoughts? Do you think Kansas City, do you think there's a chance they take receivers still?
Honestly, I'm with you, Wayne. I think because of the addition of Hollywood Brown, I think they did that partly. So that's not a need for them in the first round. So they can take a tackle. Because I think they're the type that they know, Andy Reid basically in the last 2 years had basically rebuilt the O-line. And now he's trying to do it again. So I could totally see him doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we go into round 2. And this is where it gets really funny. Is that at 33, it's the Carolina Panthers, and Denver offers a trade package to move up to 33. Las Vegas offers a better trade package to move up to 33. So Denver then has to step up their trade offer so that Las Vegas can't get it, which doesn't make sense because, like I mentioned to you, Las Vegas is just going to get their guy the very next pick because I knew that Denver wasn't trading up for this guy. But Denver ends up trading 50, 76, and a 2025 fourth. And they move up and they get Zach Frazier, the center. So you must have really wanted Zach Frazier to not wait, but to rather outbid Vegas.
Well, partly I did really want Zach Frazier. But then when Vegas chimed in, Wayne, you know how I hate the Raiders. Yes, I hate the Raiders more than any other team in the NFL. And I don't care if they were going to get their guy the next pick, but they were not going to beat me on that deal. No way.
Okay, well, you end up taking Zach Frazier. I think it's a good fit for Denver. Then Vegas trades up to 34, and they take Bo Nix. So now the Raiders have their quarterback. And so obviously this whole back and forth did not prevent them from getting their quarterback. They still get him. I'll be honest with you. I know you hate the Raiders. I like this pick for the Raiders. I think Bo Nix is a great fit there.
No, they need a quarterback. And, yeah, I could see them doing something like this because, if they don't get their guy in the first round, this makes sense for them to do this. So yeah, I could see this happening.
And you still have Gardner Minshew on a 2-year deal, so he kind of plays that gap quarterback or that bridge quarterback while Bo Nix learns the system.
Right, but you kind of want Bo Nix to play right away because that guy's already played a bunch in college. So it's get him out there, man.
Yeah, but you're giving Gardner Minshew $20 million a year.
True. Very true.
Arizona picks at 35. They take Braden Fisk. I liked this pick a lot. And then Washington taking Jordan Morgan at tackle. And then the Chargers finally, Troy Franklin, they get their receivers. So even though you went tackle instead of receiver early on, I do like Franklin going here at 37. They still get a receiver. They just got it in the second round.
And that's partly what I was thinking too, is that you and Sully have said over and over that this is a very deep wide receiver class. So I just thought, I was like, I'll get all at 5 and I'll wait since it's so deep and I'll still get a guy at what number pick was that? 37. So yeah, I still got another really good wide receiver.
Tennessee at 38 takes Kingsley Samatoa, the tackle, because they didn't get Joe Alt in the first round, so they have to address their tackle. They actually did the opposite of the Chargers. They go receiver then tackle instead of tackle then receiver. And then Carolina's on the board at 39. They take Chris Braswell. When we talk about guys falling, Chris Braswell in the second round, I think is, I don't want to say a steal because it's still a second round pick, but it's a really good pick at 39.
Okay. Yeah. So then good for Carolina. I kind of thought so when I was going through those picks. I was like, they really need an edge here. And I was kind of weirded out that he was still on the board. So yeah, it's a good pick for them.
Now, the next pick, I do have a question for you. You take Roman Wilson for the Washington Commanders. Now, they do need a receiver, so I'm not questioning the pick as the receiver. But why do they go Roman Wilson instead of Troy Franklin? They could have had Franklin at 36 and maybe gotten Jordan Morgan later. What is it they liked about Wilson over Franklin?
I wouldn't necessarily it was that way. And I would just say that the need was more for tackle, and that's why they went Morgan. So they were willing to risk that pick for like a tackle and wait for a wide receiver. So I guess Wilson was the best option when they got to 40. So that's why they get Wilson.
Okay. And then you have Green Bay at 41, another fantastic pick for Green Bay. They get Patrick Paul, the tackle, who I was kind of hoping would fall to one of my teams a little bit later. But no, he goes to the Green Bay Packers. He's going to replace Bakhtiari. So again, they got Latu, they got Patrick Paul. Great pick for great draft so far for Green Bay.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought also my picks for Cincinnati, dude, I think they were pretty good for them.
Okay. And then the Houston Texans have their first pick of the draft because they traded out with Minnesota. So they draft at 42 and they take Darius Robinson. So another guy who fell, who we thought maybe could have early on been a top 15 pick. Now he goes to the Houston Texans at 42. And the Houston Texans just keep adding more and more talent to this team. They're going to be tough.
They're my team this year, Wayne, to look out for because they've made some moves and they have a quarterback that's on a rookie contract, so they could spend a lot of money. And so, yeah, man, look out for them.
And then we have Jonah Ellis goes to Atlanta, the edge rusher, Keon Coleman to Baltimore, Arizona trades. What do I have here? Yes, Arizona traded up because I had New Orleans, and New Orleans originally had the 45th pick, but New Orleans had 45 and 150, so they had nothing in between. So I made a deal with Arizona where I got 66, 90, and 137 for 45 and 150 because Arizona has like 14 picks in this draft. So I figured I'd take advantage of that. And then Arizona takes TJ Tampa at corner. So I did chastise them for not taking a corner in round 1, but TJ Tampa is a really good corner in round 2.
I don't really know a lot about TJ Tampa, but I trust your opinion. If you say he's one of the better corners, that's a good move for them because, like we were just talking about, they do need some corner help.
And then walk me through. You have the Indianapolis Colts at 46 taking Xavier Legette. You had them taking Brock Bowers in round 1, so they address tight end and receiver. Again, what's your thought process here as opposed to taking maybe defense or some offensive line help?
I just think they really need offensive help, man. They really do. Like Pittman's really their only guy, and I guess Jonathan Taylor's their run game, but they just need offensive. Like Anthony Richardson is a rookie; he's going to need weapons to like succeed, and he's just going to need some guys. And I just think that Bowers and Legette getting them both is going to help him.
The next pick goes to the New York Giants, and here it is the beginning of the end for Daniel Jones as the Giants take Spencer Rattler, and he's going to sit for a year. Jones is going to play for $100 million a year, whatever the contract the dummies gave him. But this is the last year. They can cut him after this, and Spencer Rattler is going to take over. So Spencer Rattler goes to the Giants at 47, and I think he's their quarterback of the future.
You know what? I really think that they're done with Daniel Jones, Wayne. So yes, I can totally see this going down for sure.
At 48, the Jacksonville Jaguars take Christian Haynes for interior offensive line help, and then Cincinnati takes Jalen Polk. Again, you mentioned you really liked what you did with Cincinnati and their picks, and here's Polk, who I think is a really good receiver. I think he was overshadowed a little bit by Odunze in college, but he's a very good receiver. Do you think that he replaces T. Higgins, or do you think that they somehow work out a deal with T. Higgins and Jalen Polk as your number 3 receiver?
I think that Higgins is probably gone, and this is my thought on it when I drafted it. This would be kind of Higgins' replacement. So that was my thought.
Okay, what about Tyler Boyd? Do you think they bring him back?
Yeah, because I think they can get him on a lower amount deal, So, yeah, I can see them bringing back Boyd, letting go of Higgins after this year, and then Polk stepping right in. And like I was saying, the reason why I thought I did good with Cincinnati is because they got a tackle they really need, and then they got a wide receiver they really needed.
And I like what you did here at 52 with the Carolina Panthers. Blake Fisher, the tackle out of Notre Dame. They do need offensive line help, especially with their quarterback who's 5'4". They need as many guys blocking for him as possible. And I like Blake Fisher. He's a guy. Blake Fisher's a guy who I actually thought, a lot of mock drafts have him going in the 3rd round, which I think is really late for him. I do think this is the appropriate spot for him to go.
Nice. Because I didn't really know a lot about him, but I just figured that Notre Dame is one of those offensive tackle universities. They just pump them out like over the last 4 or 5 years. So it had to have been a good pick.
One of the reasons that Notre Dame's tackles do so well historically is that Notre Dame makes all of their offensive linemen get into the 3-point stance, hand on the ground. And, when you see a lot of these left tackles, right tackles, they're pass protectors, they're standing up or they're leaned over with their hands on their knees. And Notre Dame makes them get all the way down. Left tackle, right tackle, doesn't matter. You don't get to stand up. So it makes them, I think, more complete, which is why they have such good tackles year after year.
That makes total sense, man. Good point.
Then at 51, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. I was so happy this guy fell to 51. I thought this would be such a great pick for them. Ennis Rakestraw goes the cornerback out of Missouri. He was a guy who initially, before the combine, was projected in the 20s, and the Steelers get him at 51. Just like they got Joey Porter last year in the 2nd round. I think this is a steal for the Steelers.
And they always seem to do that, Wayne. They always seem to find guys that somehow fall like this, and they just get good guys. It's corners and wide receivers for the Steelers.
The Rams pick next. This was Sully's pick, and he had Xavier Worthy going to the Rams. Now, I know they're probably looking to get some speed on the offense, and obviously this guy has speed in buckets. If you do follow us at NFL Experts Pod everywhere, I shared a picture of all these people talking about how Xavier Worthy is like Tyreek Hill. He's the next Tyreek Hill because of his speed. Him and Tyreek Hill are fast. The end. There's no other similarities. And so what I did on our social medias is I posted a picture side by side of Tyreek Hill and Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy is 5'10", 131 pounds or something like that. And then Tyreek Hill is built like a brick. You know what? He is just built. He is stacked. And so this is not a real comparison. So Tyreek Hill, he also runs a 4.3 or faster. But again, he's built like a linebacker. And this guy's built like a twig. And he runs fast.
And do you think maybe because he's so small, that's why he's fast? That's kind of my thought.
I mean, obviously that plays into it. Usually muscular guys aren't fast, although you got freaks like Tyreek Hill, like DK Metcalf, who are, or Jadeveon Clowney. I don't know if you remember. I remember following the draft back when Jadeveon Clowney was the #1 overall pick. He ran, I think, a 4.35 or something like that at the 4. And he's an edge rusher. He was 6'6" and built, and he ran a 4.3. I think Micah Parsons ran under a 4.4 as well. He was like a 4.35 guy.
That's insane.
San Francisco gets their first pick at 53. They take Adisa Isaac. Again, they need an edge rusher. Chase Young did not work out for them. They didn't bring him back. Adisa Isaac comes in. He can play opposite Bosa, take a little bit of pressure off, and continue helping that defense. And then at Cleveland gets their first pick at 54. They take T'Vondre Sweat. Might have been a little bit early for him, but they need defensive line help. And they would have taken Isaac, but he went right before, so they take the interior offensive line. T'Vondre Sweat, if you don't know who he is, he's about 6'6", 500 pounds, and he takes a lot of space up. So that's going to free up Myles Garrett on the outside.
I thought this was a great pick by you, Wayne. I think I'm kind of looking at T'Vondre Sweat for the Broncos. I'm kind of hoping that they get him. We need a guy that can plug the hole. We were terrible against the run last year. If we can get somebody that can plug holes like him, it would be great.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about plugging holes. He's like a house-sized plug that goes in your sink.
Right.
I make another trade at 55. The Houston Texans trade 59 and 123 to Miami. That was your team. And I said, hey, will you take 59 and 123 so I can move up 4 picks? You took it, which is a good deal for Miami as well. And the Houston Texans take Edgerrin Cooper. To me, this was one of my favorite picks of the draft because he fits in so well there. So now you've got the Texans just got Stephon Diggs. In our draft, they get Darius Robinson and Edgerrin Cooper. This team's going 15-1 or 15-2 next year.
Dude, that defense is going to be lethal if they get both those guys. Like the guys that you drafted. Oh man, they already got a pretty good D, and they added guys in free agency, and these two guys. Oh man, yeah, I would agree with you.
Then we have the Dallas Cowboys at 56 take the first running back in the draft at Jonathan Brooks. Obviously, we talked about this in previous episodes. I said the first spot that a running back's going to get taken might be round 3, but I knew that somebody was going to kind of at the bottom of 2, maybe take somebody, and Brooks is the number 1 running back on the board. They need to fill the spot. He's a guy who played at Texas. He's going to play for the Dallas Cowboys. I had no problem with this pick. It makes all the sense in the world. Tampa Bay then takes Peyton Wilson. We talk about steals. Peyton Wilson had an amazing combine, and there was talk that he could be a late first-round pick, and Tampa Bay gets him at 57.
I thought that was a good pick also. It just kind of fits them too. You know, they're like, we were talking about offensive tackle university for Notre Dame. Tampa Bay is kind of like really well known for their linebackers. So this is a perfect fit.
And then we have another trade at 58. It was originally Green Bay, and you had Green Bay, but you also had Carolina, and Carolina trades up to get a receiver in Ladd McConkey. And I do have to point out some behind-the-scenes stuff is that just like McShay and Kuiper will argue over picks because they don't agree, me and Sully don't always agree. And me and Sully were arguing about this in the chat while Mark's just waiting to make his pick. And we're like, no, you don't trade that guy. I'm like, they have 3 receivers.
You guys are killing me, dude.
And Sully saying those 3 receivers are crap. But Carolina trades up and they take Ladd McConkey. I can't really argue with it. I guess it does fit a need, but let me ask you this. If you didn't have the peer pressure from Sully in that chat, you really think Carolina's going to take a wide receiver here, even though they have the 3? They got Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mingo.
I would have. I think the only one that's even really decent on that is Deontay Johnson. So yeah, I was kind of with Sully. You guys both made some very good points. You did. But in this sense, most of the time I probably would agree with you, Wayne. But in this sense, I had to agree with Sully.
All right. Then Miami takes that pick that I traded them. Miami takes Chris Jenkins at defensive tackle. Like this pick for Miami. And then we have Marshawn Kneeland goes to Buffalo at 60, one of the better pass rushers in this draft. He's going this low because he went to Western Kentucky. If he had played at LSU or Alabama, he would have been a top 20 pick. So Buffalo gets an edge rusher here, who I think that they need. And then you pick the guy. We talked about this a couple episodes ago. You said, Wayne, who's going to be the guy that they reach for in this draft? And I said it's going to be Austin Booker. Somebody's going to reach for this guy, and you have the Detroit Lions reaching for him at 61.
Maybe you subconsciously got in my head, Wayne, and I just honestly I didn't even think about that when I made the pick. But now that you say that, maybe you did. Maybe you got in my head, and I was like, yeah, this is the guy.
I mean, he's a freak. He's 6'6", he's 260, he runs a 4.4. He's only got 1 year as a starter at the Division I level, but he played really well. He's very raw, but tons and tons and tons of potential. He could be a guy who becomes one of the best defensive ends in the NFL in 2 to 3 years. So it could be a great pick, but he's very raw like Jaden Daniels. He needs some time and he may not develop. But obviously it fits Detroit and what they're looking to do. Baltimore takes Karan Amegji from the offensive line. I took for San Francisco Dominic Pooney because he can play guard or tackle. They do have Trent Williams. He's obviously not taking Trent Williams' spot, but he could start at that right tackle spot or he could start inside. And if you put him at left guard next to Trent Williams, 2,000-yard season for Christian McCaffrey.
I can see them doing that. Like they seem like the team that they're always looking for O-line help. No matter who they got, they're going to always look for better.
And then the last pick of the 2-round mock at 64, Kansas City takes a corner, Kamari Lassiter, to replace L'Jarius Sneed. I don't know if Lassiter replaces him immediately, but Lassiter is a very good corner, and I think at 64 it's good value. That is our 64 picks. And overall, when we look at it, I think every team did pretty well. And if it goes this way, I think a lot of teams are going into 2024 better than they were before.
I think so too, Wayne. I think we're all well knowledgeable enough about the NFL of all our years of being geeks, watching it and watching the draft and watching all these prospects. So yeah, I think we all made some really good moves. Totally.
And with the draft over, I know that you said you had a 2-minute warning that you wanted to get to, and we got a few minutes left.
All right. So I don't know if the NFL nation out there knows, but the Denver Broncos, are going to be unveiling new uniforms. This has been a thing with a lot of NFL teams lately, changing their uniform. So the whole reason, if people don't know, the whole reason why the Broncos are changing their uniform is because they want to be able to do like a lot of the other NFL teams and be able to mix and match your pants to your jersey to your helmet, whatever, and be able to it all work together and match. That's kind of the new trend in NFL these days. And now the Broncos are just going along with it. And I'm just worried that it's going to come out terrible. Wayne, I don't know if you remember Tampa's uniform with the alarm clock numbers. Those were terrible. Do you remember Jacksonville a few years back? They had what they called the fire and ice helmet when it was half gold and half black. That was terrible. I'm just thinking of these things, and I'm like, please, God, please, NFL gods, don't give me some abomination like that. Because, like, I'm one of the type of fans that I really like our gear. I like wearing the gear. And if it's something that I really don't like that looks appealing, I'm not going to buy it. And it's just going to upset me because it's like a tradition that I hold over, like, just watching football over the years is wearing jersey, watching the game. So I really hope my team doesn't screw this up. And I'm not willing to buy a jersey. And I really hope that they come out good and it's just all squashed in the next week.
Well, I think they should take your advice because let's be honest, nobody wants to watch the Broncos in amazingly beautiful jerseys, let alone in ugly jerseys. So I think it just gives people one less reason to watch the Broncos.
Right, and we don't need fan base doesn't need that after the last 8 years, Wayne. So give us something good to look at. Like it's like Deion Sanders says, you look good, you play good. Please, Denver Broncos organization, don't embarrass me, please.
So when it came to basketball and our uniforms, I always took more of the Will Smith approach from Men in Black. I make this look good. So it wasn't the jersey. The jersey I was wearing me.
That's a good point of view, Wade. But yeah, I'm just worried that I'm going to get abomination like those Tampa Bay jerseys. I wish Sully was here because I kind of was curious his take on those uniforms.
That's our show. That was our 2-round mock draft. We gave you some news. We gave you all kinds of information. Thank you to everybody who watched. Thank you to everybody who is listening on Spotify right now. We appreciate you. We are interactive, so interact with us. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, and what you want to see, and we will put on what you want to see. We're always looking for ideas. Even though Mark comes up with a lot of great ideas, fan ideas are our favorite types of ideas.
Yes, we're down for any positive feedback, any negative feedback. Wayne, I told you earlier today we got our first negative comments on our reels. People didn't like your trade take, but I think more the merrier. Bring it on, guys.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, we love you to interact. We love your feedback. If you disagree with me, you're a dummy, but we still like to hear it. So, go ahead and say what you got to say.
Yes. Party on, Wayne.
Party on, Mark.